Welcome back. Ready to explore some seriously thought-provoking ideas.
Always up for a good mental workout.
Today we're going deep into Adlerian psychology.
Fascinating stuff. Really challenges conventional thinking.
We're using The Courage to be Disliked, a book by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga.
And it's structured as a dialogue, a young man and a philosopher debating. You know, high stakes kind of stuff.
Yeah, like a philosophical showdown.
Exactly.
And the book digs into this idea that we're not defined by, like, our past traumas, but by the goals we set now.
It's about the choices we make in the present that shape our lives, even if it feels like the past is holding us back.
So, like, instead of asking, why did this happen to me? It's more about,
what am I achieving by behaving this way now?
right. And it makes you really question, like, are we truly aware of why we do what we do?
It's called teleology, focusing on the purpose of behavior rather than its cause. It's a different way of looking at things compared to, say, Freud, who really emphasized the past.
So it's almost like saying we're always creating our own reality,
Huh.
even if we don't realize it.
Exactly. And that leads to another key idea. Everyone can change, no matter what their past experiences were.
I bet that's pretty empowering to hear, especially if you've been feeling stuck.
Absolutely. And it introduces the concept of lifestyle, how we see the world, ourselves.
Oh, like our own personal operating system, shaping our beliefs and behaviors.
Precisely. Think of someone whose lifestyle is constantly seeking approval from others.
So they're always prioritizing pleasing people, maybe avoiding confrontation, not setting boundaries.
Right, maybe even choosing a career based on what will impress others, not what fulfills them.
Makes you think, like, what lifestyle am I operating from without even knowing it?
It's an interesting question to consider.
But if it's like an operating system, can we just upgrade to a new one?
You absolutely can. Adlerian psychology says we have the power to choose a new lifestyle at any time.
Seriously. Never too late to rewrite the code.
Never too late. It's about personal agency, you know, not feeling trapped by the past. We have the power to shape our present and future.
So like saying, okay, maybe I had bad programming, but I can install a new operating system, one that's better, aligns with who I want to be.
Exactly.
And speaking of programming, something we all struggle with, feelings of inferiority.
Right.
Got a whole playlist for those moments. But Adlerian psychology doesn't see those feelings as like a weakness, does it?
Not at all. Adler believed those feelings are natural, part of being human.
So they can even be a good thing.
A driver for growth, actually.
It's not about getting rid of those feelings, but more about understanding how they can actually motivate us.
Exactly. There's this great example in the book about a student. She claims she's terrified of blushing, and she uses this fear as an excuse to avoid confessing her feelings to someone she likes.
So instead of facing possible rejection, she creates this whole story around her inferiority to protect herself.
Right. It's a defense mechanism, but it stops her from growing, potentially finding happiness in a relationship.
And maybe it's not even just avoiding negative outcomes. Maybe it's about avoiding success, too. What if she's scared of what happens if things actually work out?
That's a really interesting point. Highlights how complex these feelings of inferiority can be.
Right. So we've established those feelings are normal, even healthy to an extent.
Sure.
But what about when those feelings get out of control?
Well, that's where we see what's called a superiority complex. Basically, it's overcompensating for deep-seated feelings of inadequacy.
So like those people who are constantly bragging or putting others down to feel better about themselves.
Precisely. The braggart, the know-it-all, the one who always needs to be right.
Classic examples. They try to build themselves up by tearing others down. But inside, probably struggling with a lot of insecurity.
Exactly.
And that brings us to a big idea in Adlerian psychology. Life is not a competition.
Right.
Such a refreshing perspective. We live in this culture that's all about comparing ourselves, striving to be better than everyone else.
A constant sense of competition. And it can be so harmful. Like there's only so much success, so much happiness to go around.
Like we're all on this hamster wheel, running and running, but going nowhere. Always checking who's behind us.
Instead, Adlerian psychology says, see others as comrades, not competitors. We're all working on the same life tasks, like becoming self-reliant, contributing to society.
I like that. But if life's not a competition, how do we deal with conflict? There's always going to be friction when people interact.
That's true. And that's where the idea of separation of tasks comes in, knowing what's your responsibility and what belongs to others.
Okay, break that down for me. It sounds simple, but I have a feeling it's harder than it sounds.
It takes practice for sure. Imagine a parent teaching their child to tie shoes.
It's so tempting to just do it for them, especially if you're in a rush.
Right. But in Adlerian terms, you're actually taking away a learning opportunity for the child.
Robbing them of the chance to become self-reliant.
Exactly. Even small things like that can have an impact. It makes you think about all the ways we might be interfering without realizing it.
So it's not just about our kids, it's about everyone, right? Like all our relationships.
The book even talks about bigger life choices,
Yep.
like a parent trying to influence their child's career path.
Oh, yeah. My parents really wanted me to go to law school, even though I was clearly more into, creative stuff.
Perfect example of separation of tasks. Your parents have their own tasks, you have yours. Trying to control each other leads to conflict.
So how do we actually do this? Letting go of that need to control or influence others sounds great, but it's tough, especially with people we care about.
It is. The philosopher in the book actually shares a personal story. He had a difficult relationship with his own father for years.
Oh, wow. What happened?
It wasn't until he started using this separation of tasks idea that he found some peace.
I'm curious, how did he apply it?
He realized he couldn't force his dad to change or feel a certain way. He could only focus on his own side of the relationship. How he chose to approach his father, how he responded to his actions.
So he shifted his focus from changing his dad to accepting that he couldn't control his dad's behavior.
Exactly. And that helped him let go of some of the frustration he'd been carrying.
Powerful stuff. This whole letting go thing reminds me of another concept in Adlerian psychology: not seeking recognition from others.
Ah, yes. That's a tough one for a lot of people.
Right. We're so conditioned to seek approval and validation, like we're programmed to need that feedback.
But Adlerian psychology argues that always seeking approval can actually get in the way of freedom and happiness.
Because then you end up living someone else's life, constantly trying to meet their expectations.
Exactly. It's a recipe for feeling unfulfilled, always striving for something outside your control. The book asks a really powerful question. Are you living to satisfy someone else's expectations? If so, whose?
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It's a big question to consider. And that kind of leads us to maybe the most challenging idea in the book, the courage to be disliked.
Oh, yeah. That one makes me kind of nervous. I mean, nobody actually wants to be disliked.
Yeah.
It seems like the opposite of everything we're told about, like being successful, having good relationships.
Sure, but it's not about going out of your way to make people dislike you. It's more about accepting that you can't please everyone all the time.
So letting go of that need for everyone to approve of you, accepting that some people just won't no matter what.
Exactly. The book says trying to please everyone actually prevents you from being truly free, authentic. If you're constantly worried about what others think, you're never really being yourself.
It's like we become chameleons, always changing to fit in, and we lose our own color.
Right. The philosopher actually shares that he decided to live a life where some people might dislike him. He saw it as the cost of being true to himself.
That's a bold move. It's like saying, this is me, take it or leave it. But then, where do we find that sense of belonging if we're not getting it from other people's approval?
Well, Adlerian psychology talks about community feeling, a sense of connection to something bigger than yourself.
So not just our personal relationships, but like belonging to humanity as a whole.
Yeah, it's recognizing that we're all interconnected, part of something larger. The book even extends it to the universe itself. A pretty mind-blowing concept.
It really makes you think. But how does that community feeling actually lead to happiness?
Adlerian psychology suggests it comes from contributing to that community, not seeking recognition for ourselves.
Okay, so shifting our focus from what can I get to what can I give?
Exactly. Finding meaning and purpose through helping others, not through getting external validation. And you know what? This actually leads to one of the most surprising things in Adlerian psychology, a critique of praise.
Wait, you're saying we shouldn't praise people? But we all need encouragement, positive reinforcement.
It's not about never acknowledging someone's good work, but it's about recognizing that praise can sometimes have a negative side.
How so?
Well, it often comes from a hierarchical viewpoint where we're judging the other person as somehow less than us.
Like we're the authority, assessing them based on our standards.
Right. It creates this subtle sense of inequality.
Instead of praising a kid for good grades, we might encourage their effort, their love of learning.
Exactly. Shifting from judgment to encouragement.
So if praise isn't the key to happiness, what is? This book has a pretty strong answer, right? Happiness is the feeling of contribution.
And that brings us back to community feeling. When we find meaning by contributing to something larger than ourselves, we experience a sense of worth that doesn't rely on external validation.
Like finding our place in the bigger picture. Knowing that our actions matter, even in small ways.
And this is totally different from the kind of fleeting satisfaction we get from just seeking approval from others. Think about those wealthy people who find fulfillment through philanthropy.
They already have everything money can buy, but they find happiness in helping others.
Right. It shows that happiness isn't about what you have, but what you give. What about all this messaging we hear about being special or extraordinary? That seems at odds with Adlerian psychology.
That's true.
Well, the book actually encourages the courage to be normal, letting go of that need to be exceptional, and finding freedom in accepting yourself just as you are.
So instead of trying to stand out from the crowd, we find contentment in just being ordinary.
Exactly. That pursuit of easy superiority can actually lead to some pretty unhealthy behavior, a constant need for attention. It's a never-ending cycle of trying to prove your worth.
Maybe all that striving actually keeps us from being happy.
It's about recognizing that true fulfillment comes from within, not from what other people think. It's embracing your own unique qualities without needing to compare yourself.
This is making me rethink my own ideas about success. So Adlerian psychology seems to be about letting go of control, recognition, even the need to be special.
Releasing those attachments that keep us from real freedom and contentment.
But how do we stay present, grounded in the moment? It's easy to get caught up in distractions, worries. Letting go of those things sounds great, but actually doing it.
It's not easy. The book talks about energial living.
Okay, I've never heard that term. What is it?
It's about being fully engaged in the present, experiencing life as it unfolds, rather than fixating on future goals or dwelling on the past.
It's like that saying, life is a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. The book contrasts this with Kinetic Living, which sees life as a series of steps towards some distant goal.
So you're always focused on the next milestone, never really enjoying the present moment.
Rushing through a delicious meal just to get to dessert, instead of savoring each bite.
The book uses a beautiful analogy to describe energial living. Life is like a dance, being fully present in each step and movement, not just rushing to the end of the song.
That's a great way to put it. Finding joy and meaning in the present moment, no matter what's happening around us.
Wow, we've covered so much. Denying trauma, embracing normality, separating tasks, finding fulfillment through giving. Adlerian psychology offers a whole new way of thinking about happiness.
It really does.
Is there one idea that ties it all together?
I think the book would say that contribution to others is the ultimate guiding star for a meaningful life.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it? Focusing on how we can be of service to others.
Right. It gives us direction, purpose, even when things are tough, uncertain.
Like a compass, even when we're lost at sea. And when we focus on that, we don't need recognition anymore. We can live by our own values.
Which is what true freedom is all about.
Wow, this has been quite a deep dive. I feel like the courage to be disliked has given me a whole new way to think about happiness and, well, everything, really.
Yeah, Adlerian psychology really turns a lot of our usual ideas upside down, doesn't it?
It does. That idea that happiness equals contribution, it's so simple but so powerful. It makes you think about all the ways we can make a difference, even in small ways, every day.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be these huge gestures, right? It's about helping out a neighbor, volunteering, even just, being kind to a stranger. Those things add up.
It's that shift from focusing on what we can get to what we can give, and then we find a sense of belonging, purpose.
And when we focus on contributing, we don't need that constant external validation anymore. It's like we tap into something much deeper, more authentic.
This deep dive has really given me a lot to think about. All these ideas, separation of tasks, the courage to be normal, living in the here and now. I think I'll be wrestling with these concepts for a long time.
It's really exciting to see how these principles can apply to every part of life. Relationships, work, even just our general sense of well-being. Adlerian psychology gives us some powerful tools for change.
Well, deep divers, we've come to the end of our exploration of the courage to be disliked. But I hope this is just the beginning for you in terms of, exploring Adlerian psychology. It's such a rich area of study full of insights for navigating this crazy thing we call life.
Definitely. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with some of the questions the book asks, questions we can all keep thinking about. What kind of lifestyle are you living right now? Are you focused on getting recognition or on making a real contribution? Are you letting your past define you, or are you choosing to embrace the power you have in this moment?
Powerful questions. The courage to be disliked reminds us that true freedom, true happiness, comes from letting go of that need for approval.
Yeah.
Instead, we focus on how we can make a difference. So how could you put that into practice today? What small act of contribution will you choose? Until next time, keep diving.